Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Shir and Dishu Bahalacha. We are holding today on today's page is going to be Reish Nun Beis Amid Beis, but we are holding on the bottom of Reish Nun Beis Amid Aleph. We're continuing Siman Shin Pei Beis, and we are up to Sif Tez Zayin. So we are still discussing the question of being maskir rishus from an Eino Yehudi, renting the rishus, renting the rights of a non-Jew in the chutzner, in his house. So you have a non-Jew living together with Jews in a chutzner. In order to make an effective eruve chatzeros, not only do we have to join all the yidden together in an eruve chatzeros, we also have to be maskir the rishus of the non-Jew. We have to rent his rishus in the chutzner. That was a takanas chachamim, as we said, because the Chazal really wanted to discourage the Yidden living together with the non-Jews, so they shouldn't learn from his ways. So to advance that, they made this takana that if you want to have an effective eruve chatzeros, so that you should be able to transfer from your house to the chutzner, from the chutzner to your house, you're going to have to approach the non-Jew, and you're going to have to ask him to rent his rights to you. So that's what we continue to discuss over here. We are now in Sif Tez Zayin, second line from the bottom on Reish Nun Beis Amid Aleph. Says the Mechaber, Im yesh le'ena Yehudi chamisha schirim oilikitim Yisraelim darim beveisai. Let's say the non-Jew has 5 Yiddish employees that live together with him in his house. So he's got a house in the chutzner, and the example I keep on using is you have a chutzner, and you have 19 Jewish residents in the chutzner, and now you have this one house in the chutzner that's owned by a non-Jew, and the non-Jew has 5 Yiddish employees, and those employees live together with him in his house. And if you look right away in the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Kat Nun Beis, the Chavetz Chaim says, Darim Beveisai, these Yiddish employees live together with the non-Jew in his house. Bachadarim miyuchadim l'chal echad b'fnei atzmai. They each have their own individual private room. So you have this non-Jew's house, and he has 5 rooms in the house that are dedicated, each one to one of his Yiddish employees. So now the question is, what is the status of these employees as far as the other residents of the chutzner are concerned, and as far as themselves? So let's see what the Mechaber says. You have this case, you have these chamisha schirim elikitim Yisraelim darim beveisai. Says the Mechaber on the bottom line, ein dirasam chashuva dira. Their rooms that they live in do not constitute an independent dira, sheyeyasru zeh al zeh, so that they should aser on each other. So the question, of course, is like this. Normally, if you would have 5 Yidden living in an apartment building, so you have an apartment building, you have 5 individual apartments, you have 5 Jews living there, they're going to aser on each other. You have multiple residents living in these apartments. Let's say the apartment opens up onto a common area. Either you could have a situation where the 5 apartments open onto a common courtyard. Each one of the apartments has its own door to the courtyard. So of course these 5 residents are going to aser on each other. If they want to be able to transfer from their apartments to the courtyard or vice versa, they're going to require an eruve chatzeros. Even in a typical contemporary apartment building, where the apartments open up onto a common hallway. So to transfer from the apartments to the hallways, from the hallways to the apartment, you're going to need an eruve chatzeros. Over here, these 5 Yiddish employees do not aser on each other. The Mishnah Berurah is going to say, not only do they not aser on each other, but let's say we have this one house with the non-Jew, and we have the 19 Yiddish households. So of course the 19 Yiddish households have to join in an eruve chatzeros, and we know that they have to be maskir rishus. They have to rent the rishus from the non-Jew who owns the non-Jewish house. But how about these 5 Yiddish employees that live in his house? Do they have to contribute to the eruv of the other 19 Yiddish residents? And the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, no, they do not. And the reason for that, and the reason for the Mechaber's halacha, where they do not aser on each other, are both the same. The point over here is, since these 5 Yiddish employees are living by the non-Jew, and they are subject to the whim of their non-Jewish employer, the non-Jewish employer can fire them and dismiss them whenever he wants. So you have Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and Dan, who are all Yiddish employees of Tony the non-Jew. They live in Tony the non-Jew's house. Tomorrow morning, Tony the non-Jew could come in and say, Ruvain and Shimon, you're fired, pack up your stuff and go. So he could throw them out of their apartments whenever he wants. So they're not considered to be independent residents in the chutzner. They're not considered to be residents at all. They are considered sort of to be guests of the non-Jew. They live in the non-Jew's house. The non-Jew is the balabayas, he is the landlord, and they are subjugated to him. Therefore, the 19 Yidden who live in the chutzner have to join in an Eruv Chatzeros. They also have to be maskir rishus from Tony to cover Tony's house and Tony's rishus in the chutzner. But the 5 Yidden who live by Tony don't count. They're not independent diurim in the chutzner at all. They are totally subjugated to Tony. So let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says. The Mishnah Berurah says in Eis Katan Nun Gimel, Ein dirasam. The dira of these 5 Yiddish employees does not count. It's not choshev. They're not considered to be diurim in the chutzner. Now the Chavetz Chaim is going to tell us here that there's another level of chidush involved over here. There's a novelty here. Even though the Chachamim, the Chazal, gave chashivus to the diras of these employees. How so? V'nasim kebailim al yadan, we see that what happened? Tony, living in house number 20 in the chutzner, he has 5 sechirim ulikitim. He has 5 employees. Now, what have we seen already previously? We saw that if you want to go be maskir rishus from Tony, but you don't want to approach Tony directly, you could approach his sechirai ulikitoi. You could approach his employee. So, if you want to rent Tony's rishus, you could go to Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, or Dan, his 5 Jewish employees, and you could rent his rishus from one of the Jewish employees. Now, what does that mean? Isn't that saying that Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and Dan have a certain level of bailus over Tony's household? Otherwise, how could they rent out Tony's rishus? So clearly the Chazal are saying that the Yiddish employees who live by the non-Jew, they do have a certain level of bailus, of ownership, and therefore they are capable as acting as agents of their non-Jewish employer, and they could rent out his rishus even without his knowledge. So says the Chavetz Chaim, here you see that the Mechaber is saying a very big chiddush. He's saying, even though the Chazal said that the Yiddish employees are considered to be a certain level of balabayas in the non-Jew's house, so that they could go ahead and they could rent out the non-Jew's rishus, even without the non-Jew knowing it, but we only say this l'kula. We only say this to create a leniency. We say this to allow the Jewish employees to rent out the non-Jews' rishus to the other Jews in the chutzner. But we do not say it to create a stringency. We don't say that the Yiddish employees are considered diurim in the chutzner so that they should aser on each other or so that they should aser on the other bnei chutzner. But in that regard, they're considered not to be residents at all. They're not balabatim at all. They're totally subjugated to their non-Jewish landlord, to their non-Jewish employer. So let's see, the Mishnah Berurah says this inside, again in Eis Nun Gimel. Even though the Chazal did give chashivus to the dirus of the Yiddish employees, v'nasim kebailim al yadan, and to a certain level they become bailim on the household of the non-Jew, lahaskir harishus, so that they could rent out Tony's rishus to the other Yidden in the chutzner, va'afilu shaloi midas akum, and they could even do this without the knowledge of the non-Jewish employer. Like amru ela lahakel, we only say this to create a leniency. Avaloi sheyiyeh dirasan chashuva dira sheyeyasru zalzeh kishalayervu. But we do not say that the residency of these Yiddish employees is considered a residency, so that they should be considered homeowners in the chutzner, so that they should aser on each other if they don't join the Erev, or so that they should aser on the other bnei chutzner if they don't join the Erev. The be'emes ein dirasan miyuchedes lahem. And this is very important. This is the key here. The reason why the residency of the Yiddish employees is not choshev and they're not considered residents is because even if they have their own private rooms in the non-Jew's home, they're not really residents. They don't have their own rights. The Akum, the non-Jewish employer, he has total rights over his entire house, even over the rooms that the Yiddish employees are living in, and he could toss them whenever he wants. He could dismiss them as his employees tomorrow, and he could tell them to pack their bags and go. So are they really residents? They're not really residents over here. They're totally subjugated to the non-Jew. It's only to make a kula. We give them a certain level of bailus because we make this kula and we say that they could rent out the rishus of the non-Jewish employer without the non-Jew's knowledge, so that the other Yidden should be able to make it a ruva chatzeres. But we do not give them bailus in order to create a stringency. Eis Katan Nun Daled, the Mechaber said that the 5 Yiddish employees do not aser one on the other. They don't aser each other, because like we said, normally if you would have 5 Yidden living in private residences in an apartment building, they would aser on each other and they would need to make it a ruva chatzeres. Over here, we have 5 Yidden living in a non-Jew's house, each one in their own private room, and yet they don't aser on each other. Zeh zeh. And the Mishnah Berurah says, like we spoke out, nor do they aser on the rest of the bnei chutzner. So you have the 19 Yiddish homes in the chutzner. You have these 5 Yiddish employees living in house number 20 by the goy. They don't have to join the Eruv Chatzeres together with the other 19. They don't have to contribute to the Erev. They do not have to join the Erev at all. Again, because they're not considered residents. Now, I think it would be nice to point out over here, to take a look at Shar HaTzion Ois Nun Hey. If you go down to the Shar HaTzion and you look at Ois Nun Hey, let's go down to 1, 2, 3, 4. In my Mishnah Berurah, it's the 4th line of the Shar HaTzion. I could probably tell you, for those of you that are using the Dirshu, I can tell you where it is in the Dirshu print. It is, it's different. It's 3 lines up from the bottom, approximately 3/4 of the way through the line, by the word Vida. So the Shar HaTzion says like this: Vida, you should be aware. Da Tosefes Shabbos v'chein ha'machzis hashekel kasvu. The Tosefes Shabbos and the machzis hashekel write. Di'im oifen umevashlin kol echad beveisoi v'loi beveis akum. Let's say these 5 Yiddish employees that each have their own private suites in the non-Jew's house, let's say they have their own kitchenettes. So they each cook for themselves, and they don't use the non-Jew's kitchen. They each have their own little private kosher kitchenette, and that's where they do their food preparation. And maybe that's where they eat. Then the Machzah Shekel and the Tosefes Shabbos say, Oisrin Zal Zeh. Then they're completely independent residents, and then according to the Tosefes Shabbos and the Machzah Shekel, they would aser on each other. However, the Chavetz Chaim says, V'lo yeheh taktim. I did not bring down this Tosefes Shabbos and this Machzah Shekel in the Mishnah Berurah. I completely ignored this shita. Why? So he explains. The Kfar Bi'arnu b'Siman Shin Ayin Siv Gimel. I already explained previously in Siman Shin Ayin Siv Gimel. Be'Bi'ar Halacha, in the Bi'ar Halacha over there, in Dibur HaMaschel Eina Moisrim, Teheicha Demotzi L'Saluke B'Chol Shah. Because when somebody lives in an apartment where the landlord could toss him out on his head at any moment, Loi Be'inon Shum Tam Acher. that right away creates a situation where they are not considered to be independent residents. Like we spoke out, you can't say that the 5 Yiddish employees that are living by Tony are considered residents of the Chutzner and independent residents, so that they should answer on each other and they should answer on the rest of the Bnei Chutzner if the non-Jew that they're living by could throw them out at any time. They mamish have no rights. It's true that they're living over here right now, but 5 minutes from now they can be thrown out on their heads. Therefore, the Chavetz Chaim disagrees very strongly with the Tosefes Shabbos and the Machzah Shekel. They want to say, well, if they're living here and they have their own private kitchens and their own private eating quarters, so then they're full-time residents. Says the Chavetz Chaim, no, not if the non-Jew could throw them out on their heads at any moment. Okay. Now let's go back to the Shulchan Aruch. We're going to go to the words of the Ramah down on the bottom over here on the last line. Now, in the print over here, look in the parentheses, right by the Ois Cotton Nun Hey for the Mishnah Berurah. It says over here, the first word here is dischirus. It's the second to last word on the page. The Mishnah Berurah says that this is a typo. This is a toyas atfus. The word should be usechiroi, the employee. So it says over here, usechiroi shel eino Yehudi, the employee of a non-Jew, einoi oiser, does not aser on the rest of the Bnei HaChutzner, im sachroi mi balabayis. If you already rented rishus, if you were already masker rishus from the non-Jew, from the non-Jewish employer. What he's saying over here is very simple, and this is bringing this down from the Beis Yosef. What he's saying is like this. Let's say Tony, again, it's really the same thing. Let's say Tony lives in house number 20 in the Chutzner, and Tony has 5 employees, be them Yidden or be them non-Jews. You might think, and again for the same reason that the Mishnah Berurah just explained, you might think that when you're masker rishus from the guy, let's say the guy who owns house number 20 is Tony, and he has a groundskeeper named Vinny. I'm a Staten Islander, you can tell. So Tony owns the house, and he has a groundskeeper, Vinny, and he has a chauffeur, Vito. And Vinny and Vito live in the house together with Tony. You might have thought that it's not enough to be masker rishus just from Tony. Maybe you have to be masker rishus from Tony. Then you also have to be masker rishus from Vinny, because Vinny lives in Tony's house full time, so he also lives in the Chutzner. And you also have to be masker rishus from Vito, because Vito also lives in the house full time. So you have 3 non-Jews living in the Chutzner over here. Maybe you have to be masker rishus from all 3 of them. So it says over here, no, you do not. As long as you're masker rishus from Tony, who's the owner of house number 20, and he is the employer of Vinny and Vito, so we don't have to worry about Vinny and Vito. You're already masker rishus from Tony. Vinny and Vito don't count. They're subjugated to Tony. They don't count. They're not independent residents. And again, the chiddush is, even though we already said that when you want to be masker rishus from Tony, if Tony is a tough guy to deal with, so instead you want to go to his schira yulikitai, you want to go to his employee, so you want to go to Vinny or Vito, you can. You could rent Tony's rishus from Vinny and Vito. So again, maybe that means that Vinny and Vito are balabatim, maybe they're residents over here in the Chutzner. The answer is no, they're not. That's a kula that we made, but we don't say it l'chumra. As long as you're masker rishus from Tony, you don't have to be masker rishus from Vinny and Vito. And the Mishnah Berurah is going to say that there's really another chiddush here as well, and that is, let's say you were not masker rishus from Tony. Again, Tony's a tough guy. You didn't want to deal with Tony, so you had to be masker rishus. Instead of going to Tony, you went to Vinny, his schira yulikitai, and you were masker Tony's rishus from Vinny. Again, once you were masker Tony's rishus from Vinny, you don't have to be masker Vinny's rishus and Vito's rishus. They are subjugated to Tony. Says the Mishnah Berurah on the bottom of Reish Nun Beis Amud Aleph in Ois Cotton Nun Hey, dischirus, that's the word that we have here in the Mechaber, dischirus, says the Chavetz Chaim Tos Seiferhu, this is a typo, v'tzarech loymar usechiroi, the proper word should be usechiroi, and the employee. So the words are usechiroi shel eino Yehudi, and the employee of a non-Jew. V'tzarech loymar usechiroi, uritzainoi loymar. What it means to say over here is The imsachrei b'nei hachotzer arishus min ha'akum. If the b'nei hachotzer, if the Yidden living in the chotzer were maskir rishus from Tony, from the non-Jew who lives in house number 20, ein tzarich liskay min ha'sachir v'halokit. If Tony has a groundskeeper named Vinny living with him in the house, you don't have to be maskir rishus from Vinny also. Beinim hu Yisrael akum. Whether the groundskeeper is Vinny the non-Jew or it's Ruvain the Jew. You don't have to rent rishus from them. And Ruvain, like we just said before, doesn't have to contribute to the Ruvei Chatzeros because they're subjugated to Tony, to the owner and of house number 20 who happens to be their employer. Umilsa de pshitahu. And really, there's no need for the Mechaber or the Ramah to speak this out. Really, this is a davar pashut. Elo de lafima de kaimalon. But again, what's the chiddush here? Because based on what we said previously, that the Chazal gave chashivus to the residency of the employees, sheseichrin mehen rishus v'chanal, because we saw that an employee could rent out the rishus of his employer, so that means that he has a certain level of balapatishkeit over here. The Chazal are recognizing that an employee does have a certain chashivus, he does have a certain level of balabatishkeit. Hava amina, you might have thought, the hevi kishnei akum shedarim babayis. So now maybe Tony, the employer, and Vinny, the employee, or Ruvain, the employee, maybe they are two independent residents. And maybe if it's Tony and Vinny, maybe you have to be maskir rishos from Tony and Vinny. Shetzarach liskar mikol echad v'chanal. If, let's say, Vinny was not an employee of Tony's, let's say he was totally separate, and you have Tony living in the house, and you have Vinny living in another apartment in the house. Let's say unit number 20 in the Chotzer was an apartment building. You had two apartments. It was a two-family house. And you have Tony living in one side and Vinny living in the other side. So then you have to be maskir rishos from Tony and from Vinny. Right? But over here, that's not the case. Over here, Vinny is an employee of Tony's, and he lives by Tony at Tony's pleasure. Therefore, he doesn't count. He's subjugated to Tony. Once you're maskir rishos from Tony, you do not have to be maskir rishos from Vinny, even though the Chazal gave Vinny enough of a balabatishkeit in the Chotzer that he could rent out Tony's rishos to the other bnei Chotzer even without Tony's knowledge. That's the novelty. That's the chiddush over here. Kamash Balan, the Mechaber is coming to teach us the lekula amrinan, that we only give this balabatishkeit to the employee when it creates a leniency, v'loy lechumra, but not to create a stringency. Ois katan dun vav mibal abayis. This is true if you rent it out. If you are already maskir rishus from the employer, you don't have to worry about the employee. And like I spoke out, the Chavetz Chaim says here, you don't have to have rented the rishus directly from Tony. Let's say Tony had two employees living by him, Vinny and Vito, and you went to Vinny, and Vinny rented out Tony's rishus to the Bnei HaChotzer as his agent, right? We said since he's his schiroi lekitoi, he's an employee, you could rent out the employer's rishus through the employee. Once you did that, you don't have to be maskir rishus from the other employees anymore, because they don't count. Once you got Tony's rishus, you got him and all of his employees. You don't have to rent out from all the different non-Jewish employees. Okay, now we go to Sif Yud Zayin. Sif Yud Zayin is a tiny bit more complex. Let's see. Just wondering if I should give a little hakdama here. I don't think it's really necessary. We already had the concept earlier of shtei chatzeros zu lifnim mizu, when you have two chatzeros and one is behind the other. So you have chatzer A is the inside chatzer, chatzer B is the outside chatzer. Chatzer B opens up onto the Rishus HaRabim. The people who live in chatzer A, if they want to get out to the Rishus HaRabim, they have to go through chatzer B. So they have a drisas haregel. They have a rite of passage through Chatzer B. And we had this at length in Siman Shinai and Ches, with all the complications that could come together with such a setup. Now we're going to discuss this setup with and including a non-Jew into the equation over here. A non-Jew is living together with Yidden in this setup. So says the Mechaber, Shtei chatzeros zu lifnim mizu. You have two courtyards, two chatzeros. One is located behind the other. So Chatzer A is behind Chatzer B. In order to go out to the Rishus Harabim, you have to go from Chatzer A through Chatzer B. Chatzer A has a Drisas Haregel, a rite of passage, on Chatzer B. Shtei Chatzeros zu lifnim mizu. And now the Mechaber is going to give us three different cases. V'Yisrael ve'ena Yehudi ba'pnimis, v'Yisrael b'chitzona. The first case is you have a Yid and a non-Jew living in Chatzer A, in the inside Chatzer, and you have a Yid living in the outside Chatzer. Now let's stop here. Let's pause here for a second. Let's just get some facts straight over here. First of all, we already said that a non-Jew does not become a problem living in the Chatzer unless there are two Yidden living in the Chatzer together with him. So, if you have a Chatzer, and you have Ruvain the Yid living in one house, and you have Tony the non-Jew living in the other house, there's no problem. Ruvain the Yid could transfer from his house to the Chatzer, from the Chatzer to his house, without any Ruvei Chatzeres at all. Why? Because there's only one Yid, and there's only one non-Jew. The non-Jew does not aser on one Yid. Now let's say you have two Yidden. You have Ruvain living in house number 1, Shimon living in house number 2, and Tony living in house number 3. Now Ruvain and Shimon aser on each other. Once Ruvain and Shimon aser on each other and they want to make it a Ruvei Chatzeros, it will not be effective unless they're maskir rishus from Tony. They have to rent the rishus from Tony. Because once you have two Yidden, now the guy becomes a problem. Now you have to be maskir rishus from the guy. So that's concept number 1 we have to have in our mind. Generally speaking, one guy does not aser on one Yid. You have to have one guy and two Yidden in order to create a situation where you have to be maskir rishus. Next thing. Let's say you have two adjoining chatzeros. So you have Chatzer A and Chatzer B and there's a doorway between them. Let's say even like our case, it's an inside Chatzer and an outside Chatzer. So you have Shtei Chatzeros zu lifnim mizu. Chatzer A is the inside Chatzer, Chatzer B is the outside Chatzer. You got to go from Chatzer B through Chatzer A to get out to the Rishus Harabim. Let's say you only have one Yid living in Chatzer A and you have one Yid living in Chatzer B. Do they aser on each other? No, they don't aser on each other. They're each living in their own Chatzer, right? Chatzer A has Ruvain in it, Chatzer B has Shimon in it. So they each are alone in their Chatzer. So they don't have to make any Ruvei Chatzeros in their own Chatzer. Now, even though Ruvain has a Drisas Haregel through Chatzer B, even though Ruvain has to go through Chatzer B to get out to the Rishus Harabim, and we've said many times that Drisas Haregel makes him a quasi-resident of Chatzer B, he still doesn't aser on Shimon, who's in Chatzer B, because it's only a Drisas Haregel. And again, he's a regel hamuteres b'mekayma. He's a mutter in his own Chatzer, Ruvain, because he's all alone in the inside Chatzer. And regel hamuteres b'mekayma, when you're mutter in your own Chatzer, then your Drisas Haregel does not aser on the Chatzer that you have a Drisas Haregel through. So if you have one Yid living in the inside Chatzer, one Yid living in the outside Chatzer, there's no problem. Everybody's mutter in their own Chatzer, and the Yid in the inside Chatzer does not aser on the Yid in the outside Chatzer, even though he has a Drisas Haregel. Now, what's the case that the Mechaber is giving me over here? Over here, the Mechaber is giving me a case. We have Shtei Chatzeros zu lifnim mizu. You have one Chatzer behind another one. Chatzer A is behind Chatzer B. You got to go from Chatzer A through Chatzer B to get to the Rishus Harabim. V'Yisrael ve'ena Yehudi ba'pnimis. In the inside Chatzer, in Chatzer A, you have a Yid and a non-Jew. Let's stop right there for a second. Does that Chatzer have a problem? That Chatzer has one Yid, Ruvain, and one non-Jew. No problem. The one non-Jew does not aser on the one Jew in the Chatzer HaPnimis. So transferring from the house to the Chatzer, from the Chatzer to the house in the inside Chatzer is no problem at all. Now, there's a Yid living in the outside Chatzer. V'Yisrael b'chitzona. There's a Yid in the other one. Okay, so we have one Yid and one guy in the inside Chatzer, one Yid in the outside Chatzer. Well, we already said that transferring in the inside Chatzer is not a problem because it's one Yid and one guy. Really transferring in the outside Chatzer from the house to the Chatzer, from the Chatzer to the house, also shouldn't be a problem because it's only one Yid living in that Chatzer. Why does he need a Ruvei Chatzeros? He doesn't need a Ruvei Chatzeros. Yet, what the Mechaber is going to say over here is a very big Kiddush. The outside Chatzar is going to be Aser. The Yid living in the outside Chatzar is not going to be allowed to transfer from his house, excuse me, to his Chatzar, or from his Chatzar to his house, until he's maskir rishus from the non-Jew. He's not going to have to make it a Eruv Chatzeres, because who's he going to make it a Eruv Chatzeres with? In his Chatzar, he has nobody to make an Erev with. Together with the Yid who's living in the inside Chatzar, he doesn't have to make an Erev with him. Why would he have to make an Erev with him? They don't aser on each other. Why should they aser on each other? He's one Yid in the inside Chatzar. He's one Yid in the outside Chatzar. The Drisis Regel of the Yid in the inside Chatzar doesn't aser on the outside Chatzar because he's Regel Hamuteris B'Mekaymai. In his own Chatzar, the Yid who's in the inside Chatzar, in his own Chatzar, he's mutter because he only has one guy living with him. So his Drisis Regel doesn't aser on the outside Chatzar, so there's no reason for them to make an Erev together. So there's nobody to make it a Eruv Chatzeres with. But what the Yid in the outside Chatzar has to do is, he has to be maskir rishus from the guy in the inside Chatzar. Why? So this is again a Takanas Chazal. The Chachamim made a Takana. And they said, if we have a Yid and a guy living in the inside Chatzar, and we have a Yid living in the outside Chatzar, then the Yid and the guy in the inside Chatzar are always going to be walking through the outside Chatzar. They're always going to be exercising their Drisas HaRegel, and they're going to be walking through the outside Chatzar. So very often, Ruvain, who lives in the inside Chatzar, and Tony, who live in the inside Chatzar, are going to be located with Shimon in the outside Chatzar. So then in the outside Chatzar, you can have Ruvain, Shimon, and Tony. And the Chazal didn't like that situation because they were afraid that Reuben and Shimon are going to learn from Tony. They're going to start acting like Tony. They're going to be too neighborly. So the Chazal wanted to create an awkward situation so that the Yidden shouldn't live in such a situation. So what they said was, the outside Chatzar is going to be Aser until you're Maskir Rishus from the Eina Yehudi. That's the first case that the Mechaber gives, and the explanation that I gave serves to give the foundation for this whole sif. So, Shtei Chatzerei Sulif Nimizu, you have these two Chatzerim, Chatzer A and Chatzer B, one behind the other one. Chatzer A is behind Chatzer B. V'Yisrael ve'ena Yehudi b'Pnimis. In the inside Chatzer and Chatzer A, you have Ruvain and Tony. V'Yisrael b'Chitzayna, and in the outside Chatzer and Chatzer B, you have Shimon. The next case, Sheyisrael ve'ena Yehudi b'Chitzayna. In the outside Chatzar and Chatzar B, you have Shimon and Tony. V'Yisrael b'Pnimis, and you have Ruvain and Chatzar A in the inside one. So again, one of the Chatzeros has, what is that showing up on the camera over there? Excuse me 1 second, I just have to knock something off the lens of the camera. Excuse me for this little interruption. In case the oiler was interested, that was a fly that landed on the lens. Okay, so in this second case of the Mechaber, again we have one Chatzar that has a Yid and a Goy. This time the Yid and the Goy are in the outside Chatzar. And we have the second Chatzar, the inside Chatzar, has a Yid. So again we have the same problem. Again, the Yid living in the inside Chatzar, he could carry back and forth from his Chatzar to his house. Why not? He's alone in his Chatzar. The Yid living with the guy in the outside Chatzar, really he shouldn't have a problem either. He's one Yid and one guy. However, the Chazal said, since the Yid in the inside Chatzar is always going to be exercising his Drisas HaRegel to go from the inside Chatzar through the outside Chatzar, so again, Ruvain, Shimon, and Tony are very often going to be located together in the outside Chatzar. So you're going to have two Yidden and a guy. So, the Chazal said, transferring in the outside Chatzar is going to be Aser. The one Shimon who lives in the outside Chatzar is not going to be allowed to transfer from his house to the Chatzar, from the Chatzar to his house, until he's Maskir Rishus from the Eina Yehudi. And now the third case the Mechaber gives, Va'afilu Eina Yehudi b'Pnimis. Even if there's a non-Jew living alone in the inside Chatzar, Ushnei Yisraelim b'Chitzayna, and you have two Yidden living together in the outside Chatzar. So now, nobody is living together with the non-Jew. The non-Jew is all alone in the inside chutzner. The Yidden are all alone in the outside chutzner. So now, first thing we have to realize is yes, the two Yidden in the outside chutzner are going to have to make an eruv chatzeros. See, in the other two cases, there is no eruv chatzeros. In this case, there is an eruv chatzeros, because in this case, Reuven and Shimon are living together in chutzner B, in the outside chutzner. So they aser on each other. So certainly they have to make an eruv chatzeros. But even after they make an eruv chatzeros, so now really it should be mutter for them to transfer from their houses to their chutzner and from their chutzner to their houses because they made an eruv chatzeros. It's not mutter. It's going to be aser until they're masker rishus from Tony, who lives in the inside chutzner, in chutzner A. Because since Tony lives inside in chutzner A, he's going to be using his drisas haregel to go out through chutzner B, and the three of them are going to be together all the time in the outside chutzner. So the Chazal required schiras rishus. They have to be masker rishus from the non-Jew. Okay. Let's stop here for a second and let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Eis Katan Nun Zayin. Zulif de Mizu, you have two chatzeros, one inside the other one. Udrisas raglam shalapnimium derech chatzer achitzayna, so that the people in the inside chatzer have a drisas regel. They have a rite of passage through the outside chatzer. Eis Katan Nun Ches. This is the key Mishnah Berurah here. Eiser, the guy is going to aser al chatzer hachitzayna, wherever the non-Jew lives. Tiltal in the Chatzar Achitzayna, Tiltal in Chatzar B, in the outside Chatzar, is going to be Aser until you masker Rishus from the non-Jew. Ad sheyiskar harishus me'anachri, until you rent the rights from the non-Jew. V'tam kolela, the reason for all this is, Dechashvinan ki'ilu kulam darim b'chatzar achitzayna, we view it as if everybody lives in the outside Chatzar, kevan shedrisas raglam alav, since they are everybody has a rite of passage through the outside, umitzuyim sham, and they're often going to be there. The gazru bazer, and the Chazal made a gzeira over here, mishum shemel yilmedu mimaisav, because we're afraid you're going to learn from the ways of the non-Jew. So now, I want to point out, the first three words of this Mishnah Berurah is Katan Nun Ches, al chatzar hachitzayna. What's happening over here is, it's the outside chutzner. In all three cases of the mechaber, it's the outside chutzner that has a problem. So again, in the first case of the mechaber, you had a yid and a guy living in the inside chutzner, and a yid living in the outside chutzner. The yid and the guy who are living in the inside chutzner, that yid is always going to be allowed to transfer from his house to his chutzner, from his chutzner to his house. He does not have to be masker rishus from the non-Jew. Why? Because he's one yid living with one guy. One yid and one guy does not a problem create. So he could transfer from his house to his chutzner, from his chutzner to his house without an eruv. He has nobody to make an eruv with, and without schiras rishus. He doesn't have to rent from the guy. He's one Jew, one guy. Does a yid living in the outside chutzner? Yeah, but the yid living in the outside chutzner doesn't come into the inside chutzner. He doesn't have a drisa regel on the inside chutzner. So the inside chutzner has no problem. The problem is that they're going to aser on the outside chutzner, because the yid and the guy have a drisas regel through the outside. Since they have a drisas regel through the outside, it's as if they live in the outside. Now in the outside, you have two yidden and a guy. Oh, you have a guy and two yidden? You might learn from the guy. So now you need schiras rishus from the guy in order to be mutter, to be metaltal in the outside chutzner. Now, the Sharet Tzion, I don't want to get too confused over here, but the Sharet Tzion points out that there's a very interesting halacha here, a very interesting chiddush, and it's beautiful to point it out in this case specifically. Again, yid and guy in the inside chutzner, yid in the outside chutzner. What did we just say? We just said, since the yid and the guy in the inside chutzner have a drisas regel through the outside chutzner, it's like they all live in the outside chutzner, and that's why the outside chutzner is aser, and the yid in the outside chutzner has to be masker rishus from the non-Jew. But wait a second. Does he also have to make an eruv with the Yiddisher resident of the inside chutzner? After all, we just said it's like everybody lives in the outside chutzner. If everybody lives in the outside chutzner, so then don't you have two yidden in the outside chutzner? And then don't the two Yidden have to make an Erev together? Explains the Sharet Tzion in Ois Katan Nun Tes. I don't want to go through it inside because we don't have time. He explains that no, the Chazal didn't take it that far. Because remember what we said in Shin Ayin Ches. The Drizas HaRegel that the inside guy has on the outside guy does not really make him a resident of the outside Chatzar. He's only a quasi-resident. And what's the halacha of Drizas HaRegel? The halacha of Drizas HaRegel is simple. Regel ha'asr b'mekaymai, if you're asr in your own chatzar, if you're asr in the inside chatzar, then you asr on the outside chatzar. But regel hamuteres b'mekaymai, if you're mutter in your own chatzar, you do not asr on the outside chatzar. This yid who lives in the inside chatzar together with the guy is mutter in his own chatzar. In his own chatzar, he has no problem. He's one yid and one guy, so he's mutter b'mekaymai. Since he's mutter b'mekaymai, his drisas haregel does not aser on the yid who lives in the outside chatzar. So they do not have to make it a ruvei chatzeres. So you have one guy and one yid in the inside chatzar, one yid in the outside chatzar. Right now you have a problem. Right now the outside chatzar is aser because of the non-Jew. What do you have to do to fix the problem? The guy in the outside chatzar has to be masker rishus from the non-Jew. But there's no erev. You don't need any ruvei chatzeres. You just have to be masker rishus. Same thing is true in the second case. In the second case, you had a Yid and a non-Jew living in the outside chutzner. You have a Yid living in the inside chutzner. The Yid who lives in the inside chutzner is regel hamuteres b'mekaymai. In his chutzner, he's completely mutter. He lives all alone in a chutzner. So of course he's mutter. Does his drisas haregel on the outside chutzner, does it aser the Yid in the outside chutzner? No. He's regel hamuteres b'mekaymai. He's mutter in his own place. He doesn't aser on the outside guy. His drisas haregel doesn't aser. So the only problem is that the guy living in the outside, he's going to be usher in his chutzner, because now, since the Yid in the inside chutzner has a drisas haregel through the outside, now in the outside you have two Yidin and a guy. So you got to be masker rishus from the guy. Again, no erev, but you got to be masker rishus from the guy. The only one of the three cases that requires an erev is the last case. In the last case, you have two Yidden living in the outside chutzner and a guy in the inside chutzner. The two Yidden in the outside chutzner, they have to make it a ruvei chatzeres. But even after they make it a ruvei chatzeres, they're still not mutter until they're masker rishus from the guy, because the guy has a drisas haregel through their outside chutzner. Two Yidden and a guy, you got a problem. You got to be masker rishus. So that's why in Nun Ches, in the beginning of Nun Ches, the Chavetz Chaim says, Oiser al chutzner hachitzayna. The problem is always on the outside chutzner. The inside chutzner, in all three cases, is fine. If the guy is alone in the inside chutzner, of course he's fine. If the Yid is alone in the inside chutzner, he's one Yid alone. If there's a Yid and a guy in the inside chutzner, so what? It's one Yid, one guy. Nobody asers on anybody. The outside guy can't aser on the inside guy. The outside guy has no drisas haregel on the inside guy, so he doesn't aser on them. So the problem is always on the chutzner achitzayna. Okay. And now the Mishnah Berurah kind of spells this out. It is on, let's see, in your print, in the Dirshu print, Umikal Makaim. It's near the beginning of the second wide line in the Dirshu print. We're in the middle of Eis Katan Nun Ches. Umikal Makaim. Yisrael Hadar Bapnimis. The Yid who lives in the inside, he's speaking out he's saying what I just spoke out. The Yid who's living in the inside chutzner, whether he's living alone in the inside chutzner or he's living with the guy in the inside chutzner, he's always going to be mutter from his house to the chutzner, from the chutzner to his house. Because if he's living there together with a guy, the guy doesn't answer on him. He's only one Yid and one guy, no problem. And the Yid living in the outside chutzner doesn't answer on him. The outside guy doesn't have a right of passage on the inside guy. And the three of them are not often going to be together in the inside chutzner, because there's no reason for the outside people to go to the inside. And therefore the Chazal didn't make a takana of requiring schiras rishus in this case. Now I want to, it's going a little longer than I expected, but I want to finish Sif Yud Zayin. I wanted to do Yud Ches also, but I think we might have to stop. Even though Yud Ches is very easy. But let's finish Sif Yud Zayin. I'm on the third line down in the Mechaber. V'yesh mi she'omer. There are those that say, Sha'afilu eina Yehudi bapnimis, even if you only have a guy living alone in the inside chutzner, v'yisrael echad b'chitzayna, and then you have one yid living alone in the outside chutzner, oiser! The guy who lives in the inside chutzner asers on the yid who lives in the outside chutzner. Shtal zechvar, look at this big chiddush. We have an opinion that says chutzner A is the inside chutzner B is the outside chutzner. Shimon the yid lives in the outside chutzner, and chutzner B, all alone. Does he need an erev in his chutzner? No, he's all alone. In the inside chutzner, you have Tony. Tony lives alone in the inside chutzner. Tony asers on Shimon. Wow, how could that be? Let's say it wasn't Tony living in the inside chutzner. Let's say it was Ruvain living in the inside chutzner. Say you had one yid living alone in the inside chutzner, one Jew living alone in the outside chutzner. Would they aser on each other? No, they don't aser on each other. Why should they? Shimon certainly doesn't aser on Ruvain. Shimon doesn't go inside to Ruvain. Even Ruvain to aser on Shimon. We said Ruvain doesn't aser on Shimon because it's only a drisas haregel, and drisas haregel doesn't aser if you're mutter in your own chutzner. Regel amutaris b'mekaymai, drisas haregel doesn't aser. But now it's not two yidden. Now it's a yid and a goy. The goy asers on the yid. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah over here where he explains this astonishing chiddush. Eis cotton nuntes v'yesh mi she'omer da'afa gav de b'cham makayim Yisrael echad im akum eino yaser afilu im darim b'chatzar echad. Usually, even if Reuven and Tony would live in one chutzner together, the guy doesn't aser on a yid. One yid, one guy, nobody asers. Svirale dahacha garat fei. This is even worse than if a Jew and a non-Jew would be living in one chutzner. Even though now the Jew and the non-Jew are living in two separate chatzeros, you would think that that's even better. No. Over here, even though they live in two separate chatzeros, it's even worse. Why? The bechatzer shehu lifnim michatzer, because when you're dealing with one chatzer behind another chatzer, lav kulei al mayadi miva mi darboy. The people of the Rishus Harabim don't know who lives in the inside chatzer. Now they're going to see that Ruvain, who lives in the outside chutzner, is carrying from his house to the chutzner, from the chutzner to his house. They know that there's a guy, Tony, who lives in the inside chutzner. They don't know who else lives there. They're going to think, Ki darim goy gam Yisrael milavad akum. They're going to think that besides Tony in the inside chutzner, they know that there's an inside chutzner. They know Tony the guy lives in the inside chutzner. They're going to think that there's also Ruvain, Levi, and Yehuda who live in the inside chutzner. When they see that Shimon, who lives in the outside chutzner, is carrying in the outside chutzner from his house to the chutzner, from the chutzner to his house, they're going to say, oh, you don't need to be maskirishus from the guy who lives in the inside chutzner. I know Shimon lives in the outside chutzner. I know Tony lives in the inside chutzner. I asked Shimon if he was maskirishus from Tony. He told me no. And I see that Shimon is carrying from his house to the chutzner, from the chutzner to his house. So obviously it's mutter. They don't realize that Tony the guy lives all alone in the inside chutzner. So it's only one yid and one guy. So it's a big chiddush. However, the Chavetz Chaim says, Lahalacha loy naktinon kain. We don't paskin like this big chiddush, like this shita lahalacha. Ki harbe achroinim dachu zeh mehalacha, because many achroinim said that the halacha does not follow this. All right, I was kind of hoping that we would do Sif Yud Ches. I really wanted to get to the bottom of this page, but this is already, looks to me like over a 45-minute shir, so I guess we're going to have to stop over here. And again, thank you so much for those of you that are using the videos. When I log in at night and I see that there are views, it gives me the kayach to go ahead and do it. If I look and I see that nobody's using it, then I get fafoilt. It gives me a riffian, and it's hard to make the time and take the effort of going ahead and doing it. So thank you so much for using the videos. If you have anybody else that you know who you might think is not a member of our shir, but you know you have friends that learn Dirshu, and you think that they would appreciate it, even though right now we're lagging behind Dirshu, but maybe they would appreciate it anyway. Maybe they're also behind, or maybe they want to use it for Chazara. If you know anybody else that you think might appreciate it, you could email them the link. You could text them, tell them where it is. You could tell them about it. They could subscribe. They'll get an email every time I post. And then Chavra Islay, maybe we could generate a bigger shir. We could have we could have our shir in the room when we're there together, but we could also have the schus of a big virtual shir. This room is bilti gvul. This room is huge. We can get as many people in this room as we want, and anybody who shares the word of it definitely has a shir in the schus. It's good to see everybody virtually. Can't wait to see you in person. Be well.